Hi, everybody. We are going to start in about 5 minutes. So, welcome to those who are joining the room. All right, we are going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Please drop in the chat for those of us who are on Zoom, like the emoji of your choice that describes how you are feeling today. But just welcome to Touch Gift Foundation's Sizzle and Shine series. So this series is dedicated towards the leadership development skills, the workplace skills, the leadership skills, just really enhancing those for each individual that has joined us either in person or via Zoom. So it's a really powerful series. We really enjoy it. We love all our sponsors, and we'll shout them out a little bit later in this morning or afternoon at that point. But yeah, without further ado, I do want to introduce our speaker for today, who is extremely dynamic. She's going to get us all together. on acing our auditions and things. So just want to welcome LaKia. So if everybody could give a Zoom and a YouTube round of applause for her. Just welcome her to the stage, and she'll tell us all about all the amazing things that she does.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. Good morning, everybody. My name
Oh
is
no,
LaKia
LaKia, I don't think
Conner.
we can hear you. If anybody can hear her, could we give a thumbs up?
Oh, can you hear me now?
If you
Testing.
cannot hear, you can't hear her, Laisha.
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear her okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Shauntee, can you hear me?
She can't hear you.
Okay.
Our other guests that are online, if
Can't hear.
someone
Okay.
could drop. Okay, perfect.
Anyone else can hear me? Brandon, Jovita, sorry to call
I can
you
hear you.
out. You can? Okay. Okay, perfect. I want to make sure everyone can. Okay.
Yep, I can hear you too.
Okay, perfect then. So good morning. My name is LaKia Conner. I am one of the lead facilitators with LLF Consulting. I also work with Chicago Public Schools, in the Children and Family Benefits Department. I'm really excited to be here this morning. We have a very important topic, a very relevant topic today, interviewing, making sure you have all those skills to get those jobs you want. I'm very excited to be here this morning. And then let me see. Can I share my screen? Do I have permission to share?
I believe so. Just
Okay, go ahead. Next.
Perfect. We can see it, Lakia.
Okay. Awesome. So this is our topic of the day. We're going to be talking about acing your next job interview. So I do encourage anyone in the room to come off mute, please. If you want to join the camera as well and come on camera, we would love to see your face, get some interaction going so that we can talk more about job interviews. So this is basically our workshop overview. Here's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to start off with why interviewing is important. Why does that matter? Why is this such a process that people try to take so seriously? Next is what are employers looking for? Those qualifications may vary, but we're going to focus on those positive character traits that you want to walk in there with so that you can show you're the best candidate. Then we're going to move a little bit into interview prep, which is just, talk a little bit more about different types of job interviews and what you can expect. Then during the interview for module 4. And then last, we're going to talk about after the interview and what follow-up steps you could take to make sure that that employer remembers you. And then I do encourage, if there's any questions, please feel free to come off mute, put your hand up, and then I don't mind stopping and we could cover that as well. Okay, so why interviewing is important? Before I say my answer, does anyone have any input on that? Why is it important to interview for a job? Why is it important that you try to sit down and have some sort of detailed conversation with an employer before you sign the contract and come on board? Laisha, you can go ahead.
I think interview is important for employers to get a gist or get a better understanding for the job prospects that have applied for the job.
I like that. I do agree. That is very important as well. So let's see. Let's see. Anyone else have their hand up? No. Okay. So, what is a job interview? That's where we're going to start off. So, a job interview, it's a selection process, and it helps the organization to weed through their job candidates and see who is the best fit for the position they're trying to fill. This is also a two-way street, though. Job interviews are not just for the organization, it also is a great chance for the applicant to get those further questions answered. You want to try to learn more about the position, especially before you move further into this process, and make sure that it's a good fit for you. So we're going to talk about some why our interviews conducted. We have a few different reasons for that. One of the first reasons is one of our most obvious. It's a good way for the organizations, for these companies to narrow down a large candidate of pools. You know, when they have a position or two open up, they typically get way more applicants than they can hire. So the point of this application process is to help weed down that group and see who's better fit for that position. Number two, this one's more so focused on the applicant. It's a great way for us to connect and increase connections. So I know we live in a time where there are a lot of virtual interviews, but a lot of companies are still doing in-person interviews. And that may be multiple people being interviewed at the same time. It's a great opportunity to sit in a room with someone who's like-minded and maybe career-minded as well, and they're waiting with you. You may exchange conversation, and then now that's an extra connection you've made on top of hopefully getting that position. So that would be number two. Number three, this really helps the organization to test your skills. They want to see how quick you are, how prompt you are, how you do in conversation. So this helps them assess your skills and see what you're good at, and are you able to talk the talk and walk the walk. It's important that when we're applying for jobs, you don't want to just have the skills on paper. The organization also wants to see that when they meet you in person, that you can deliver those skills. As I mentioned earlier, interviews are a great time for additional information to be gathered. So during the interview process, it's common for organizations to reveal secrets. They may talk about issues going on in the building. They may talk about obstacles that the company has had to overcome. This is a great time for them to be very friendly with you and kind of open those doors for communication. So you also want to make sure that while you're on a job interview, not only are you asking those questions, but you're also listening to the things that are being said as well. Use this as an opportunity to really get insight into what the company is like on a day-to-day basis.
LaKia, I have a question. Would it be a great idea during a job interview to take notes? And if the answer is yes, how would a candidate go about? Should we ask the employer, is it okay if I take notes? How would a candidate navigate that?
Yeah, so I would definitely say a job interview is a great time to take notes. And if that's what you're interested in, you can let them know that. Depending on if it is your first or second job interview, or maybe a phone screening, there may be a set amount of time. So the employer may not have 10 or 30 additional minutes to allow you to take notes, but they're often very open to you taking notes. It shows initiative, it shows that you're serious about the position, and it is welcome. So if it's a phone screening, it may be easier for you to type notes onto your phone. If it's in person, bring a nice notebook, a nice small notebook and a pen so that you can jot that down. That's totally fine.
Thanks, LaKia.
No problem. Number five, interviews are being conducted so that your intellect and your knowledge is being judged. The company wants to know that they're investing in someone who knows what they're talking about and who can handle the job. So this is a great time to showcase your skills, showcase your knowledge. If you know that your last job gave you a lot of the skills useful in the new job, the job interview is the perfect time for you to speak on that, list any experience you may have, examples. You definitely want them to walk away knowing that you're qualified. Number six, so we have the expectations of the applicant are known. So typically, the expectations of applicants are known in a few words: salary, company holiday policies, company perks, work hours. Those are, some of the things we're thinking about when we're thinking about going to that new position and making sure that it works for our day-to-day life. The interview is a great time to get all of that out the way. It can be said verbally. And then also in those job postings, these things are typically mentioned. So these are things you want to pay attention to. You want to make sure that you're signing going with a job that will work for your personal life as well. This also gives the organizations time to explain their job requirements. They're able to talk more personally. Although you've read the job posting, this gives you a chance to talk to a real person who can go in detail. They can also explain expectations. They can talk about if there's KPI that needs to be reached. Or is it numbers based? Is it performance based? Customer service based. It's a great time for you to get that better understanding of what they're looking for. Another one, clarify everything beforehand. This is always great, and this is the best way to avoid misunderstandings. During the interview, you want to verbalize your thoughts. When you're unsure of what the interviewer may be saying or asking for, this is a great time to get your clarity. So this can be really important, especially in a position where you're familiar with this line of work. We all have had experiences doing something before. So when you're going into another position where it has similar work, you honestly have examples in your head of what you're looking for and what you're not. You want to make sure you ask these questions during the interview. Is this team short staffed? Are you fully staffed? What are your company procedures? How do you handle X, Y, and Z situations? You really want to make sure that you're with a company that not only has thorough policies, you want to make sure that it's a good fit for you. Okay, and did we have any additional questions just before we move on to that next section, interview and selection process?
I don't have a question, LaKia. I have a comment. I would imagine that sometimes candidates can be nervous when it comes to expressing their candidates, but I think you pose a very valid point. Oftentimes, candidates often walk away from interviews and there's a lot of uncertainty that they have. How long does your process take? What are the next steps? And so again, I think you kind of hit it on the head. Your interview is a great time to ask those questions so that you don't walk away with any uncertainty. Oftentimes, candidates, that the whole waiting process can be very daunting. And so when you have the opportunity to ask those questions, it helps put you at ease as a candidate.
I definitely agree with that. I do. And that's a great point as well. Yes. So being nervous is normal, and employers do expect that to a certain degree, but that is why you prep yourself before. If you know that there's a certain line of questioning that you do want to ask, but you're a little hesitant to say it, prep those questions beforehand. Run it by a loved one, a friend, or even a colleague. See, is this an appropriate way to say this? That's the best way for you to handle it, because you don't want to leave that interview with questions and uncertainty. You want to try and get everything out of the way. So thank you for pointing that out. So our next section is the interview and selection process. So why is this important? To assess the suitability of potential employees. So yes, when positions open up, these organizations, they have many candidates, and they do have to make sure that they find the suitable person. So they not only look for someone who can meet the job qualifications, they want to make sure that ideally you are a cultural fit for the company as well. Two, to form a bridge between the sender and the receiver. So this interview process, we could think of it as a bridge. And what it does is allows that sender to communicate while the receiver is getting that knowledge as well. So it's a two-way street, as we mentioned earlier. The job interviews are not solely for the organization to fill the position. It's also for the candidate to find out if this is a place they want to be, and if this is a place where they can see themselves fulfilling their career goals, staying long term. These are all things that we do consider when we're going into a position. Number three is to verify facts and figures. So during the interview, this is a great time for that employer to verify the facts that you've put on your resume. That may be educational qualifications, experiences, as well as a time for you to identify more personal things about yourself. So this is why it's very, very important, not only for us to be honest on our resumes, but for us to know what's on your resume. We oftentimes get help with our resume. We may use an outside organization, and that's fine, but you want to make sure that you take the time to familiarize not only with the language that's on there, but all of the experience listed, because during that interview, they will ask you to expand upon that. And the best way to show that you do have that experience is being able to talk about it when asked. Number four, very important, to determine the speaking skills of the candidate. So candidates can be evaluated by the manner they communicate. Organizations want to make sure that they're bringing on a team player is a term we often hear. They want to make sure that you have strong speaking skills, that you can handle yourself in a professional setting. An interview is a great time for you to show them that. So, and sometimes this may be writing skills as well, but this is a great time. And this is definitely one of the reasons why those interviews are important. Number five is to check your confidence level. Sometimes during the interview, you may be asked to present. You may be asked to present for the role. They want to make sure that you have those skills. So, although interviewers they do expect a little bit of nervousness, you want to make sure that you are confident in your skills, that you practice and you rehearse. Because if you appear to be shy or less confident, this could potentially pose a red flag, especially in management positions or positions where you may be faced with some difficulties. A company doesn't want to bring you on board if they're worried that you may be timid when it comes to doing the job. So
And
you want to
LaKia,
be confident.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I was going to say I can attest to this as an interviewer where we've passed on candidates before just because of the lack of confidence. To your point, the position required for them to present in front of management. And so making sure that we hired a confident that was confident and holding their own was very important.
Exactly. See, and then that is very, very good point. You don't want, to be passed simply because you were shy. And it's not that anything is wrong with that, but that is why it's so important to take that extra time to prepare yourself. The more prepared you are, the less resistance you'll have when you get in there and it's time to shine. Six would be to test the quality of answers. So the interviewers want to know how well you can articulate yourself. They want to examine the quality of answers delivered by the candidate. Can you speak with confidence? Are you quick to say anything just to get any response out? Are your responses thoughtful? Are they thorough? Did you answer what they asked you? These are things to keep in mind, when you're answering questions on an interview. Do not feel like you have to hurry up and blurt out a response immediately. Don't be afraid to take a moment, think it out, think about the word choice you want to use. Think about is what you're about to say answering the question. It can be easy to go on a tangent and get distracted. You want to make sure that you're showing them not only are you paying attention, but you can answer the questions that are being asked. Number seven is one that we haven't touched on yet, to determine how well the applicant knows the company. So, if any of us have ever sat through a job interview, one of the first questions they will ask you is, so, why do you want to work with us? The best way for you to have an answer for that question is to do your research. You want to read the company's website, Google search them, check the news, look up any products or services they may offer. See if they have any pages. A lot of companies have social media pages these days. These are things you want to familiarize yourself with before that phone screening, before you get that first call. Because at the end of the day, a company wants to know that you're not just showing up for a paycheck. They want you to be invested in their company and in their end goal. Do your research. The more you can expand upon what a company does in their line of work during the interview, that will definitely earn you brownie points when it comes to the pool of candidates. Number 8 is to raise opinions. So through the process of interview, you also get a chance to raise your own opinion. It's very common for interviewers to ask specific questions related to the work. This is a great opportunity for you to make a suggestion. Speak on anything that you feel may better the company. This shows the company that not only are you already serious about the work, but you have assets and ideas that you could bring to the table, which is always a plus. The importance of interviews for employers. Just a few quick points. Information about the job seeking candidate so they get to walk away knowing something about you. It supplements the application void. There's only so many questions that can be placed on a job interview, just as there's only so much that you can place on a resume. The interview allows the company to fill in those blanks and to get to know you better as a person. The interviews help to select the right candidate, and that also helps you ensure that you're getting the right position. The interview collects useful information. And then that last one is good interviews increases goodwill. When companies have a great interviewing process, you walk away from that company. And even if you don't get the job, you do go off and you tell people, hey, when I interviewed with that company, it was great. And hey, I may try again in the future. That is beneficial for them. Just want to stop for a second, see if we have any questions at all, anything in the chat. I'm just going to double check. Okay, I think we're good on that. So the importance of the interview for the job seekers. This helps to provide employment opportunity. The more interviews you go on, it does also help to develop your confidence as well. It helps the job seekers to accept or reject the job because you may go on a job interview and decide that it's not a good fit. And that is okay as well. That's really why you want to take that job interview seriously to make sure that you're not signing yourself for something up that won't work in 3 weeks. And then it also helps the job seeker to increase their contacts. What are employers looking for? I'm going to open the floor for that one. Does anyone have any idea of what our employers looking for? Do you feel like it's anything specific? Do you feel like it's more general? What's on your mind if anyone wants to speak?
I would say probably just to validate what a candidate's resume actually says. We know in a world of technology, you have AI, you have professional resume writers. And so essentially anybody could write anything on a resume. So I would imagine that employers are probably trying to validate if what's on a resume is actually reflective of a candidate's skill set.
Perfect. Great answer. That's a great answer. So we're going to get into that. What traits are you going to be judged on during your job interview? First, it's going to be some of those personal characteristics. Do you have good grooming? Do you have good manners? Do you maintain good eye contact? So these are some of the first things that they're going to see. That first impression is one of the most important ones. So you always want to go into that interview well rested, energetic. Make sure you've eaten, had your coffee, had your water. You want to go in prepared and in good spirits. Next is personality. They're looking at, what do you like? Are you outgoing? Are you shy? Are you overbearing? Are you quiet? Will you fit into their corporate culture? You have to think, this interviewer, they're very well versed on their job. So they already know what kind of people work there, and they have an idea of what kind of people will excel there. So they're using this as an opportunity to see what your personality is like. So you do want to showcase some of your personality on that job interview, just so that they remember you and that they know why they want you to be the person in that position. Next is maturity. What about your overall sense of balance? Can you make value judgments and decisions? This is very important on a job interview. And then lastly, we have, make a little adjustment over here, self-expression. Are you confident in expressing your ideas? Can you speak with confidence? Anyone have any other ones? Any traits that you think they may be looking at, maybe that we didn't cover while you're on a job interview? Okay, so now we have three more. Experience, if you were thinking of that one. What about your academic achievements? Were you involved in any extracurricular activities? What job skills do you have from past positions? This is definitely something that we want to showcase, not only on our resume, but you want to be able to expand on those things. Just as we said, there's only so much you can put on a piece of paper. Use that interview as a time to give them a little bit more details about why you did all those things and why you excelled at them. Your career goals. It's common for interviewers to ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or what are your professional goals? Is it consistent with the company's goals? They also want to feel like you're going to stay around for a while. You want to make sure that you get a position that you do have the opportunity to stay around for a while. Not only will that help you, but that will also help the company as well. And then enthusiasm and interest. Are you really even interested in this job or this industry at all? Although we do understand the importance of making money, we still have to show our enthusiasm and interest. At the end of the day, if you take on a job and you only think about the money, you may reach a point where your heart isn't in it, and that will affect your job performance as well. So you do want to make sure that you're taking the time to pick careers that actually interest you.
And I'll add another point here, LaKia.
Yes.
It's very easy to detect when a candidate is not genuinely interested in a role and more so in it for the money. And so I think the enthusiasm and interest is very important, which ties back to doing your research. And so obviously, when you understand a company, you can learn to get excited about some of the initiatives that they're working on. So that will definitely help to build the enthusiasm and the interest, specifically how it relates to your professional skill set.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Thank you. So here's just some of those character traits. Having strong character means making decisions based on a core set of values. And then we did put them up here on the screen so you can just look over them. Some of those really important ones, patience, humble. Are you creative? Are you honest? Resilient. These are very important skills that you want to showcase when you are on that job interview. You want them to know that you are a great, well-rounded person and that they would love to have you on the team. So here I have a list of the common qualities that employers are looking for. So if you've ever had a job interview, sometimes you're asked to describe yourself. So this slide right here can definitely help you with that, just to give yourself an idea of, out of all these great personality traits I have, what are some that I need this employer to see? You want to show that you have great communication skills and that you're honest. They want to be able to trust you with the work, and they want to be able to trust you with the workload. Loyalty and dependability, they go together very well, simply because that not only do they want to know that you're going to come to work, they also want you to know that you're going to get that job done. Teamwork. Are you able to work in a team? Although some jobs do allow more autonomous work, it's always very important to have good communication communication skills when it comes to managers or any community that you may work with, as well as team members as well. Flexibility. And I know sometimes, this is honestly where that honesty comes in as well. As humans, we all do have personal lives. So you want to find how flexible you can be with the job. You may not be able to do everything that is asked of you, but that's why it's so important to make sure that not only do you understand those job responsibilities, but that you're asking the questions that are on your mind so that you can meet them where they meet you. We also have self-reliance and eagerness to learn that will help your skill set grow, confidence and good work ethic. Determination and problem solving skills is very important as well. Are you the type of person who has to sit around and wait on someone to solve the problems for you? Do you think that makes you appealing as a candidate? Are you positive and ambitious? So these are just a few of the common qualities that they're looking for, but these are definitely, traits that you want to make sure you're showing when you're on that job interview. So interview preparation. So when you've been contacted, you all have set the date. What can you do to prepare yourself for that interview? Does anyone have any tips at all that they might want to share just about how they prep for interviews before we dive in there? Okay. So we're going to keep it moving. And we're going to talk about job interview types. There are a lot of different types of job interviews. So some of these may be new and some of these may be something that you haven't heard of. So second interviews, it's more common for organizations now to not only have one interview, they may have 3, and I've even heard up to 4 or 5 interviews for a position. Off-site interviews, depending on what their workspace looks like, especially after COVID, a lot of companies went remote. So it is common for a organization to ask to meet off-site so they can meet with you in person. Phone and group interviews are some of those that are a little bit more common. We have heard of those more in the past. They have behavioral interviews, and this gives them a chance to really see how you behave and how you'll be able to handle that job culture. Competency-based interviews. So those are those interviews where you really want to make sure you have all your information straight, you've done your research, and you're able to showcase your skill set. Informal interviews as well as structured. So just depending on the line of work, everyone may not ask you to dress up and wear slacks for an interview, especially if that is not closely related to the line of work. That is okay too. You want to make sure that's why you have a good understanding of the company as well as what their practices are like, and then that will help you appear like, you're ready and prepared to join. We also have final interviews when you've typically made it towards the end of that hiring process and they've decided, they're deciding that they might want to go with you. So this is the interview to kind of seal the deal. On the spot interviews, so that's typically we don't hear about as many on the spot interviews with organizations, but they're very common with like career fairs or job fairs, places where you have many organizations where they're letting it be known that they want to hire immediately. You may be able to walk in and answer some questions right then and there and move forward in that process. So we also have video interviews as well as panel job interviews, case and informational interviews where you're just, getting a better idea of what is going on. They have mock interviews and unstructured interviews as well. Wide variation there. Okay, so we're just going to go into a little bit more detail just about those interview types that I mentioned. So those second interviews, typically after you pass that first one, you've got another interview, and this one's going to be a little bit more detailed. It can even be up to several hours long. Maybe after that, you go into that final one. It's the last step in that process. Typically, final interviews are conducted by CEOs or maybe another person in upper management. And then the key to this interview is to really take it seriously, just as well as all the other ones. You don't want to not be as prepared for the final interview because you feel like you've already done 2 or 3. This one is just as important. Those off-site interviews, like, I did mention earlier, it may be in a public place, a coffee shop or a restaurant. Sometimes companies do this when they don't have a local office, or maybe, they don't want the current employees to know about the possibility of a new hire as well. On the spot interview, that is when you turn in your application and you're asked to do an interview right away. These are sometimes like the retail or hospitality industries, but sometimes they'll announce that they'll be holding interviews on a specific date. So that's also normally when they do those on the spot interviews as well. Phone interviews. So this is typically, while you're actively job searching, you may need to be prepared for a phone interview on a moment's notice. I could definitely say I've had this experience happen before. You want to be prepared, especially in situations where you're applying to multiple jobs. Don't think just because you've put in 5 job applications that you can't research all 5 positions, because in the event that one reaches out today or tomorrow, you do want to have some intellect to spit back to them when they're asking those questions just about why would you like to move forward. These often start unscheduled, but sometimes phone interviews are set up first via email. So video interviews, those are more common perhaps if you've done a remote job, or perhaps you're just interviewing for a position in another state. And then those are typically held on platforms such as Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So next, group interviews. So typically when employers are holding group interviews, it's just because they're more efficient than those one-on-one interviews. There are 2 types of group interviews. So they have an applicant being interviewed by a group, or it is one interviewer and a group of applicants. For panel job interviews, those take place when you are interviewed by a panel of interviewers, and then you may meet with them all together or separately. So sometimes they'll be all in one room as well. Behavioral interviews. So those are interviewers who use behavioral-based interviews to determine how you've handled various job situations in the past. So the idea is that your past behavior will predict how you will act in the new job. So during these behavioral interviews, these are definitely a great time to make sure you're mindful of what you're saying. Even when an interviewer is asking you about perhaps past conflict or obstacles you've had to overcome in the position, you do want to make sure you're not using this opportunity to bash a company or badmouth any people that you've worked with in the past, simply because you have to keep in mind that interviewer wasn't there and they don't know you very well. And you don't want one of your first impressions to be you speaking negatively on something that's happened another time or place. So we also have case interviews, which are interviews that typically include the interviewer like giving you a scenario and asking you to manage the situation. So they may give you like a setup and give you a few minutes to think about it, and you have to walk them through how you would handle that situation as far as thought processes, steps you would take, and any other people you'd bring on board to solve that issue. And then these are most commonly used in like management consulting and investment banking interviews. They require you to show off your analytical ability and your problem solving skills as well. So I'm just want to pause for a second, see if anyone has any questions at all.
No questions, LaKia.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we're just gonna jump right back in to job interview styles. So one of the first job interview styles that we're going to talk about are those open-ended interviews. So they can be broad in scope. Typically, the candidate is speaking during the majority of the interview, and it's more open-ended questions that can focus on broad topics. So when you have these type of interviews, you want to describe your skills and experiences and how they relate to the job. You want to let them know how you'll perform when you're there answering those questions, and don't get too lost in the broadness of it all. So two will be situational. So these type of interviews typically presents candidates with a real world scenario and asks them to solve the problem or evaluate how they would approach the situation. This is a great opportunity to give specific examples of how you handled similar situations in past roles. You want to describe how you'd approach the scenario if as if you have no experience with situations similar to the one you're presented with. And then the third one is behavioral. So behavioral interviews are becoming more popular in today's job market. They focus on your behavior in the past professional, personal, and interpersonal positions and what your outcomes resulted from your actions. So for this, you want to use a method called the STAR method, and then I'll get into that a little bit more for answering those behavioral interview questions. And then those you're going to explain a situation, the task you performed, the actions you took, and the results of those actions. And then that's going to break down our STAR acronym. So let's talk a little bit more about that. That's STAR interview response technique. So the first, situation. So it's best to describe your relevant work situations, but depending on the amount of directly transferable experience you have, you want to make sure that you're keeping the conversation relevant, not only to the job you're interviewing for, but to yourself as well. It's imperative to talk about a specific instance rather than your general responsibilities. We even have an example here. So maybe you're on that interview and what you're saying is, in my last role as lead designer, there was a point in time when my team was short-staffed and facing a significant backlog of work. The account managers were setting unrealistic deadlines, which was causing stress for my team and affecting morale. So in that example, the candidate, they gave a clear explanation of the situation. They said how it happened. It was due to the backlog of work. And then they also gave us some insight as to what managers were doing and how that was creating some unsettling emotions in the employees. Next is task. So this is when you're going to describe your responsibility or role in the situation or challenge. So this section does require a minimal amount of time similar to the situation component. Just consider 1 or 2 points to best illustrate. The example for this one, as a team leader, it was my role not only to ensure my team met our deadlines, but also to communicate bandwidth to our other department and keep my team motivated. Short and sweet. You don't have to list off, 10 job tasks that you were responsible for, but you do want to showcase those ones that are most relevant to the job you're trying to get. Next is action. So explain the specific actions you took, how you handled that situation or overcame that challenge. So in this example, our candidate is letting us know, I set up a formal creative request process, including project timeline estimates to set better expectations. I scheduled weekly meetings with account managers to discuss my team's bandwidth and share program updates. I also kept my team informed of the new processes so that they could have some peace of mind knowing the issues are being addressed. That's a great example because they were direct. They said exactly what they did. They, identified a few impactful steps that they took. And then that is a great example of your action. And then lastly is result. So for your result, you should spend only slightly less time discussing the results than your actions. You want to decide what 2 or 3 most impressive results were. You want to talk about those. Try to quantify your success and give them concrete examples. Discuss what you've learned, how you grew, or why you were a stronger employee because of the experience. This example, they were saying by providing more transparency into my team's processes and setting better expectations with the account managers, we were able to reprioritize the design team's to-do list and complete everything in our backlog. So they gave an exact example of how they were able to clear up the issue that caused the conflict. I took these learnings, continue to apply this structure, and as a result, in the following quarter, we shortened our average project timeline by 2 days. I also learned just how important it is to communicate clearly across teams. This is a great example because not only did that candidate show how they solved that problem, they also showed that employer, not only can I solve problems, I'm able to go back and reflect and grow as a person from that as well. So these are questions you want to ask yourself before you go into a job interview. And then you want to ask yourself these so that you can speak on them when you're there. What past accomplishments am I most proud of? What have you accomplished in your work? What 3 things do I want to get better at this year? What skills do I have that I've noticed differentiates me from my peers? Number 3 is a great thing to talk about, especially in a setting where you have the interviewer speaking with multiple people who all want the goal. Everyone is selling themselves. Everyone is talking about how great of an employee they are. What skills do you have that make you different? What will your past or present colleagues say is the best thing about working with you? And then if you still keep in contact with past or present colleagues, this may be something that you could ask them and get some real feedback to take into your interview process. And where do you want to be in 3 or 5 years? Questions you should research before to research a company before your interview. You want to demonstrate your interest in the role. So I have a lot of good information. You want to make sure you read. I'm not going to read it all to you, but just you want to consider researching the following, who is the CEO? What is the company's mission? Can you relate to that mission? These are all things that you want to make sure you have in mind so you can demonstrate your seriousness about a position. You want to take some time to learn about the company's culture, mission, and values. So this can almost always be found on a company's webpage. A simple Google search, just type in the name of that organization, and typically these are some of the first things that will pop up. Knowing what a company's mission statement is and what they value, it'll help you uncover a deeper layer to the business. You'll gain more insight doing this just regarding what they care about, what they prioritize, and ultimately it'll help you discover who they really are outside of this hiring process. Number 3 is to better align yourself with the company. The main goal is to show the employer that you are the right person for the job. So the more information you have about the company, you can pitch yourself as that person they're missing. And then that way, that hiring manager will have no problem envisioning you on that team. To help craft meaningful questions, you want to demonstrate that you did your homework by using your knowledge to ask more questions. So you want to avoid obvious questions. Some of those obvious questions may be, what does the company do? How long have you been in business? What is the company's mission and values? And the reason we say that these questions are obvious is simply because if you do a little research, you can typically find these answers yourself. Asking these kind of questions does let the employer know that you may not have even read the full job posting. And that's not what we want to do. Some examples of some more thoughtful questions would be, I saw on the company website that X is one of the core values of the business. How would you say this position demonstrates that value? So that question is more in depth and it even allows them to explain more of what they're looking for. Number 5, to determine if it is the right fit for you. Invest in your future, do your homework. You are applying for this job, you want to make sure that it is a good fit for you. Researching an employer before your interview, it not only will it set you apart from the other candidates, it will increase your confidence and help set you up for success. So next we're going to talking about those dress to impress interview attire guide. So the best place to start with is start by researching the company's dress code. All companies do not require suit and tie. Some companies are fine with a more formal dress code. You want to choose clothes that make you feel comfortable and confident when you're going on that job interview. Use your best judgment. Don't overthink it. What we do want to try to avoid revealing clothing, stains, snags, pet hair, and holes. You want to make sure that you take an extra moment, make sure you get ready for that job interview early, and check yourself out front and back because they will be looking at your appearance very closely. Choose clothing that's accommodating to the climate and season. That'll avoid you being uncomfortable. If it's colder outside, you want to make sure you're wearing something. You may want to do layers. They may have their heat on. We've all been stuck somewhere in a situation where we're either too hot or too cold, and it definitely can affect how you present yourself. Ensure your clothing is pressed and wrinkle free as well. Those are some great tips. For women, some appropriate interview attire. Wear a blazer or a navy blue for endless option. Those are great staple pieces that you can keep in your closet, and then it gives you the option to switch them out. Experiment with button-down shirts, different colors and different fits, and see what you like more. You could go classic with the dress and tights, a black dress and tights. You can also do a sweater and those black dress pants. That's also another easy way to be office appropriate. For men, we could do light colored jackets and pants. A sweater or a button down also helps for a very pulled together look. A black or navy blue blazer. Statement ties are also often welcomed in professional settings. Modern business formal. You may even consider adding texture or keep it basic. So here's some tips to make the best impression when it comes to dressing to impress for that job interview. Keep your bright, flashy colors to a minimum. Keep in mind that a blazer doesn't necessarily upgrade the rest of the outfit. You do want to make sure that all of the pieces are cohesive. Go light on perfume and cologne. This is really good for especially those office settings. You don't know what allergies people may have, and the worst thing you'd want to do is, potentially set off the allergies of your interviewer, because that will be something that they remember about you. And it's not that it's something that couldn't be fixed, but it's just not helpful for that great first impression. Be careful about casual. Some companies will tell you that you don't have to do a blazer or a dress. Ask those clarifying questions and make sure you have an idea of what casual means to them. You don't want to look too dated, or you don't want to overdo your makeup as well and appear too distracting. Traditional ties make the best first impression, and keep your accessories to a minimum as well. So next, during the interview, what is selling yourself during the interview? What does that mean? It means taking steps to convince the hiring manager that you'd be a valuable company asset. When you meet an interviewer, make it your goal to present yourself as the best person for the job. And that's, how you're going to sell yourself. Get comfortable talking about yourself. Tailor yourself to meet companies' needs. Plan your talking points and distinguish yourself from the competitors. So I would definitely like to say those planning of the talking points is a great way to get more comfortable. Top 10 interview questions. Number 1 is tell me about yourself. So I do have an example here on the screen. In this example, what this woman is doing is, so she's speaking on as an ER nurse, what she does to de-stress. So she starts off saying some of her personal interests, relaxing outdoors, rain or shine. So that's an example when you're asked to talk about yourself. Maybe some things you like to do for fun. In this example, this ER nurse, she spoke about how she likes to go out into nature. Number 2 is, why do you want this job? You want to make this answer personal. In our example, we have construction design is in my blood. Both my dad and my granddad were home builders who owned their own construction firm. So this applicant, he went for a personal route to start off that answer. He also tied it into how the company he's applying for, how they have a respected career. And just as it's value to him and his family, he also respects what they're doing as well. Number 3 for our top 10 interview questions is why should we hire you? For our example, this is a great sentence to start off with. You should hire me because my experience is almost perfectly aligned with the requirements you asked for in your job listing. In the rest of that example, they went on to explain how that experience relates. The person also took the time to explain how they're well versed in providing world-class customer service. So you want to make sure that when you're answering this question of why should we hire you, go back to that job posting and review it and make sure you know what they're looking for. So that those are the things that you could bring up. Number 4, what is your greatest strength? In our example for this question, this applicant started off saying that their greatest strength is their intellectual curiosity. I enjoy researching the latest technology trends so that our critical information technology systems remain uncompromised. So this person decided to tie in their intellectual abilities with the job. So this also lets the interviewer know why you're qualified, why they should hire you. So these are things you definitely want to think about before you walk into that room so that you can have a well-rounded answer. Number 5 is what is your greatest weakness? Now, this one can be challenging. Oftentimes, employers do ask this question as an opportunity to pick your brain. You want to make sure that you give a good answer for this one. So, I'm going to go ahead and read this example. My greatest weakness used to be procrastination. Friends who knew my work style would tease me, saying panic precipitates performance. In college, I was the person who pulled all-nighters to finish their essay right before the deadline. This isn't as irresponsible as it sounds. From the moment I'm assigned a project, I'm thinking about it. Most of my first and second drafts get composed mentally, so it's only a matter of writing down that final draft. And since I have an excellent command of grammar, I don't have to spend much time proofreading or revising. However, after I landed my first job as a content writer, it became clear that while this process worked for me, I've never missed a deadline. It made my editor extremely nervous. So I've learned to set early deadlines for myself at least 24 hours before the actual deadline so that my projects now always arrive with plenty of time to spare. And I wanted to read that example so that you're able to see how the person answered the question about the weakness, but they made sure to turn it around before they stopped speaking. You don't want to just leave off on a bad note. You want to make sure that you give detail. As he mentioned, he struggled with this mostly in college. And he also spoke about how in a past position, he was able to turn it around and even mentioned that he never missed a deadline, just to provide that extra reassurance to that employer that this is something I have control of.
And LaKia, I'll add here, I like in this example the authenticity that the candidate shared, because I think it's important that employers want to know that you're comfortable with showing you're human. So this was an opportunity for the candidate to humanize themselves, to say, hey, I'm not perfect. But to your point, this person was able to do the work and do what they needed to do to turn the situation around.
Yes, exactly. And that is very important when you're answering that question. This is also something that you could think about in advance. What is your weakness? You want to be honest with yourself, but you have to also present to that person, how do I move past this in my everyday work? Why do you want to leave? Or if you've already left, why did you leave that job? In this example we have, I was very fortunate, I'm sorry, to be hired by ABC company right out of college. They taught me a lot about digital marketing, and it's been stimulating to work as a contributor to their creative teams. However, I'm ready for the next step. In the rest of that example, they're talking about how that person has always been a leader. They were captain of the crew team in college, student body vice president. They're giving real examples that we can relate to show how they're ready to grow and take those next steps. So why do you want to leave? Keep in mind also what I mentioned earlier. Never take this question as an opportunity to badmouth or bash your existing job or current company, even if realistically you may have some of those feelings in your heart. I know as humans, it's only natural, and it is the reality of working a job, but you do not want to use this as a time to bring negativity into your space. You want to make sure that you're showing that you're positive and that you're moving forward with the best foot. What are salary expectations? So this is number 7 on our list. So reliable salary calculators like the one used by Glassdoor say that sous chefs here in Portland average around 45,000 a year, which is 1% above the national average. I bought home around $42,000 last year. While I would definitely welcome a salary over 45K, particularly given the cost of living here, I'm open to negotiation if a lower salary was accompanied by greater flexibility in scheduling and additional vacation time. So this is a really great detailed example. In this example, they did their research in advance. They used glassdoor.com, which is a great website if you're not already familiar, to finding a little bit of background information about organization. They used numbers from Glassdoor. They compared it to the national average. They also even referenced Portland, so the city that they're in and interviewing in, as well as the cost of living here. So you want to try to be realistic, and you want to let the employer know that you are well versed and that you do have a certain idea in mind. This person, even when as far as mentioning that they will be okay with working for less than 45K if they have flexibility in scheduling and additional vacation time. That's why it's very important to know what your own requirements are when it comes to those job interviews so that you can have these conversations. If these were the requirements that you needed to be able to sustain your day-to-day life, you have to make sure that the job can provide that for you. How do you handle stress and pressure? So, when you're answering this question, you want to make sure that you speak honestly. And in this example, we have, I'm not someone who's energized by or thrives in stressful environments. My first step is managing stress is to try to circumvent it by keeping my work processes very organized and my attitude professional. So they started off the answer by saying, I'm going to try to not get myself stressed out. How? Keeping work processes organized and keeping their own attitude in check. When customers or associates come to me with issues, I try to look at things from their perspectives and initiate a collaborative problem solving approach to keep the situation from escalating. I find that maintaining an efficient, congenial office with open lines of communication automatically reduces a lot of workplace stress. This is a well thought out answer because all the examples keep tying back into how the key to handling stress and pressure is to avoid it in the first place. And in the end, they also touched on sometimes unanticipated stressors will arise. When this happens, they just take a deep breath, remembering that the person they're dealing with is frustrated with the situation, not with me. I then actively listen to their concerns and make a plan to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. And that's a great answer for that question. Ultimately, all you can do is try to keep yourself calm and get the problem solved. And that's what will relax an interviewer in saying that. So, number 9 for our top 10 interview questions, describe a difficult work situation or project and how you handled it. So I think the most difficult situation I face as a production manager is when I have to lay off staff, either because they aren't doing their job properly, or even worse, because sales are down. When I can, I try to work with underperforming personnel to see if we can't improve their efficiency first. Then I hand them their pink slip and give them straightforward reasons for why they are being laid off. No one wants to be fired without an explanation. When I have to let someone go, I keep my tone polite and avoid too many you statements because you absolutely do not want to cast shame on them. So the reason we went ahead and chose this example is because it is a great example of that STAR method as well. Not only did we get a clear description of the situation, they let us know why they're being faced with this situation. It's either due to the staff not doing their job properly or sales are being down. They walked us through how they handle it, down to the tone of voice used and what is being said when that pink slip is being handed over. So after that person speaks, you have a very good idea of that process and how it goes. And then number 10 is, what are your goals for the future? So you want to make sure that this is something that you are thinking about and putting some research into beforehand. I'm someone who likes stability. My goal is to find a job that I can hold long term with a local company, becoming a valued employee as I gradually advance to positions of increasing authority and responsibility. I'm extremely interested in the teller job here at Financial Credit Union because of the internal training program. My long term goal is to eventually become a branch manager after I've proven my competencies in customer service and team leadership. So whether you're tying in your answer to this question to the company you're applying for or not, just make sure that you do have an answer and end goal in mind. So here's just a few words or phrases we can avoid during that job interview process. As I mentioned before, negativity about a previous employer or job. We don't want to spend our time doing that. I don't know. Don't say this. An example of how you may say is, that's a great question. If you don't mind, I would like to take a minute to think about it. Try to think about these things in advance. I would say if you really don't have an answer, take a moment to yourself and figure out what can you answer. But you don't just want to leave the question open-ended with I don't know. You want to avoid those discussions about benefits, vacations, and pay. These are not conversations that you want to have too early. A lot of times, these things are not explained in detail during that first interview process. It's always better to allow the company to bring that up first before you get those clarifying questions in regarding to those benefits, vacation, and pay. It's on my resume. So the job interviewer, they may ask you something that you know you've taken the time to explain on your resume. You don't want to come off as rude or like you're unwilling to explain yourself in an interview by saying it's on my resume. If you do feel like, they've asked you something that may already be explained, use this as an opportunity to give them something different about that situation. Maybe you list your college experience, maybe in this time you could go on and explain how you've used it since your graduation. Unprofessional language. This is definitely something we want to keep to a minimum during a job interview. You're less likely to use unprofessional language when you slow down. Take your time to think about your response and focus on speaking clearly. You can also avoid using filler words by practicing replacing them with a brief pause or deep breath. I know I'm someone who I've been nervous before and I find myself saying like. It's very common, but it can be noticeable when you're the person listening. If you find yourself starting to feel tongue-tied or that you're just trying to spit out an answer, take a pause, a deep breath, and then try to speak again. 6, I don't have any questions. This is not a good question. This is not something that you want to say because it doesn't show that you're very interested in the position. You should always have something to ask. If you go into the interview not having something to ask, try to listen closely so that you can reference back something else that was said earlier, and then you could ask about that. You don't want to ask what the company does, especially if it's information that has already been available, whether it was on the internet or in that job posting. So that's also why it pays to do your research. Overly prepared answers or cliches. I'm actually going to read an example for this one. In my last role, I would sometimes struggle with taking on too many responsibilities and then find myself overburdened. While I don't like to say no to a task or a project, I was able to learn that it's okay to ask for help and to delegate tasks so our entire team could accomplish our goals together and on time. So this answer is very common. It's not very personal, and you can avoid it overall. You want to avoid discussions about your lack of experience. If you feel like you're applying for a job that has a certain area that you may not have experience in, take the time to do the research so that you can figure out what skills you do have that will help you learn that skill. And then personal information not relevant to the job or your qualifications. So when you're answering interview questions, use specific examples and anecdotes. It can help you prove your qualifications and stand out to the interviewer. But it's important to make sure that the lasting impression you are leaving is memorable for the right reasons. Do not use your interview as a time to give out too many details about your personal life unless the information is directly relevant to the position. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I don't think I see anything. Let's check the chat. Okay. Okay. So here's some nonverbal communication that you can be doing during your interview that you may not even be thinking about. First is make eye contact with the interviewer for a few seconds at a time. You don't have to look them directly in the face the entire time they're speaking, but making eye contact does show that you are paying attention. Smile and nod at appropriate times when the interviewer is talking, but don't overdo it. Smiling and nodding is actually a way to show that you are actively listening. So it is okay to just show signs that you're taking in of what they're saying. Be polite, keep an even tone to your speech. Don't be too loud or too quiet. This also goes hand in hand with, like we said, slowing down, take a deep breath, keep yourself calm. Don't slouch. You want to make sure that you sit upright, feet back, feet flat on the ground, back to the chair, just like how we did when we were in school. You can relax and lean forward a little bit so that you do appear interested and engaged. But you don't want to come off too casual and relaxed. So that is why we try to stay away from that slouching or leaning back or making yourself too comfortable in that chair. Keep your feet flat on the floor, your back against the chair. I already mentioned that one. You want to pay close attention to the interviewer. Take notes if you're worried you won't remember something. I know Laisha did ask that question earlier. Taking notes is definitely fine. You want to listen closely to the interviewer and don't interrupt. Make sure you're giving them a chance to get their full question out. Even if you already know what you're going to say, you do not want to cut off the interviewer while they're talking. Stay calm. Even if you had a bad experience at a previous position or you were fired, you want to keep your emotions to yourself. Don't show anger, and you do not want to frown as well. You can hold a pen and your notepad or rest an arm on the chair so you look comfortable. Don't let your arms fly around the room when you're making a point. I know some of us talk with our hands. I'm one person as well. And it is perfectly fine to put your hands in your lap. If you need to do a little bit of holding your hands and setting them in your lap, that's fine as well. So when you're coming towards the end of that interview, here's some nonverbal communication that you want to make sure that you are being mindful of. Before leaving the interview, be sure to give them a firm handshake and smile. On your way out, you want to say goodbye to the receptionist or anyone else you spoke to during the interview. It is common practices for the interviewer to stop and see how was everyone as they came in. You don't want to be rude to someone at the front desk and think just because you had a great interview inside that you will necessarily get the job, because that front desk person is also a valued part of their team and their input may be considered. You can request business cards from all your interviewers. You'll need those for your follow-up communication. That also gives you a better chance to start getting to know some of that company staff as well. Remember your manners. Thank the interviewer for taking the time to meet with you. And then after the interview, so we've covered a lot today, and now you've had that interview. What should you be doing afterwards? So it is very important to follow up after an interview. Following up with the people you communicate with during each stage of the hiring process shows that you are grateful and excited about the position. You should take the time to write a thoughtful follow-up letter expressing your enthusiasm about the job, thanking the reader for their time, and you can even include anecdotes from the conversation that shows your strong soft skills. What this does is it'll make you a more memorable candidate, as you will have had more communicative touch points than those who did not send a follow-up. The more they're talking to you, the more likely they are to remember you. So I actually have a good layout of follow-up email format. So for that subject line, the person is very direct. Thank you for your time. Next, they opened up with a thank you in that first paragraph, and they addressed the person that they interviewed with. So this is why it's very great for you to make sure you collect those names and business cards if possible. You want to talk about your goals, interests, and experience. Talk about why you're enthusiastic about possibly working about the company, and how you're excited that you were able to meet with someone. You want to make sure you use this follow-up to set yourself apart from other candidates. Point out any other skills that you may have, and end with the signature and your contact information. So some follow-up email tips. If there is something you forgot to say, or maybe you want to elaborate on from your interview, this email is a great place to mention it. Maybe you forgot a key aspect of some experience you had, and after the interview, you thought about, wow, I really wish that they know I've done that before. You can mention it in your follow-up email. You want to make sure you're sending that email within 24 hours of that interview. Start with the name of the person who interviewed you and use their first name if you're on a first name basis. If not, include their first and last name. Choose an appropriate length. This doesn't have to be like super long and detailed. You want to close the letter with your name, contact information, and just include your phone number and your email. And then carefully proofread before you hit send, just to make sure that we aren't sending over any grammatical errors or any slip ups that we didn't mean to include. And just how to write a follow-up email. Like we already said, you want to make sure that subject line is appropriate. Thank you for your first paragraph. You want to talk a little bit about those interests, goals, and experience, and then how what skills you have that set you apart from the other candidates, and ending with that contact information so that they know where to find you. And then thank you. That does bring me to the end of our presentation. It's been great presenting to you all. I do hope that you did learn something today. And then if you have any questions, please, I would love to hear them.
I don't have a question. I just want to say, LaKia, thank you. You did a great job with explaining how to ace our next interview. You definitely shared some very valuable tips. that would position us for success. So thank you again for your time this afternoon.
No problem.
Awesome, awesome. I'm gonna just wait. I'm gonna give it a few minutes because sometimes Zoom does a delay to see if anybody has some questions. This is really great information. So thank you so much, LaKia. I'll give it a few.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, LaKia. I wanted to ask you, please. One thing I wanted to ask was that when they asked the ending of the interview and they asked why, can you give some examples of when they asked why should we hire you for this company? Do you mind giving some examples of things to say in that ending?
Sure. So when you're asked that question, so this is definitely something that you can prepare for before the interview, right? When you read that job posting, what did you read that made you say to yourself, I think I could do that? So I'm just gonna say, maybe you have customer service experience and you notice this is a customer service job and you notice that, they target this specific neighborhood. And let's say you used to live in that neighborhood. So you're familiar with the neighborhood and you have customer service experience, right? That's what you were thinking when you applied for the job. So when they ask you that, that's a great time for you to bring those things up. I would say you go back to that job posting, review it, and you see how it relates to you. What skills do you already possess? What experience did you gain from that last job that you can carry over into this new position? So if you feel like maybe out of the 5 qualifications they ask for, you have all of those, you let them know, why do you want to work for them? I noticed that you all are passionate about giving back to this community. I was a member of this community for 15 years. I know the importance of it. That community ties closely in with my personal beliefs. I have family in that community. I have built relationships there. So I would say, you want to make it personal. And that's also why you kind of do that research about the company so that why is that somewhere you want to be. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Um, any tips on practicing the star format, especially when you're trying to go to a new industry so you don't have relatable job experience?
LaKia, if you don't mind, I'd like to take this one.
Go ahead.
Brandon, I think what you just said is perfectly fine. Practice is key, specifically with the STAR methodology. And the STAR methodology, behavioral interviews are becoming more common. So what you said is going to be key. Practice makes perfect. So I would recommend taking your own practical experiences, and even prior to setting an interview, I would recommend I would recommend practicing those answers. Specifically, look at specific situations that are relevant to the job. Again, look at that job posting and determine the parity. So what are some similar situations that I've held in the past that may be relevant to this job that I'm applying for? Again, identify specific tasks from your past professional history that would align with the position that you're applying for, even down to the actions and the results. Again, the key with STAR is going to be practice. I've never seen a candidate be successful with answering in a STAR methodology, just doing it on site. It is going to require some practice. And so even in your downtime, stand in the mirror and start to recite some of those specific examples. What was the situation? What were some tasks? What was the action? And most importantly, what was the result that you delivered?
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you. I had Laisha answer that one because she is the LLF and LLF consultant. So thank you for joining in that one.
These are good questions. Definitely keep them coming. have a little bit of time as well. So I mean, I have the things that I have to do on my end, but we are here for everybody. So any more questions for LaKia or Laisha?
Not a question. I just want to make one final point before we close out. And LaKia mentioned it at the top of today's workshop. An interview is a two-way street conversation. Oftentimes, candidates, they're very nervous during the interview process. I always say it's easy to convince a person that doesn't know you, much easier than it is to convince a person that knows you. And so when you go to an interview, you want to make sure that you are prepared, that you have your questions, that you've done your research, so that you can also participate in the conversation. I think what makes the process more timid for an interviewer is when you are in the hot seat and you are the person that is only answering questions. And so it's equally important for you to interview the company as well. So just like they're asking you questions, you should also be asking them questions as well.
Thank you so much for that. Anybody else have any questions? Going once and twice. Okay. Well, LaKia, thank you so much for all the rich insight that you gave us on today. It is extremely helpful. I was listening, taking notes. I know that everybody on here and on YouTube was also feverishly probably taking notes as well. So thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to drop these gems for us. So and also, Laisha, thank you so much for all that you do as well. So and
You're more than welcome.
you dropped, yes. So thank you. All right. So as I said before, this is a part of a series. So we've been rocking all summer with this extremely phenomenal series. So the Sizzle and Shine series for Touch Gift Foundation. So this is put on by Touch Gift Foundation. Our sponsors are the Chicago Fund for Safe and Peaceful Communities, Southland Rise, LLF Consulting. So as LaKia said, Laisha, I know she just had to hop off, is the LLF and LLF Consulting. So we thank them for their partnership, as well as the Metropolitan Board for the Chicago Urban League, which is the long version of Metro Board, which we call as well. So in the chat, I am putting in here the registration link for the rest of our series. We would love for you to join us. We'll be back here on Zoom next week as we talk about all the things. We'll have Sarita Love, not sure if you all know her, but we'll be talking about professional development pathways. So just a really deep dive into that, which we're excited about. The link that I am also putting in here is to our survey. So our survey, on here, you will select the first drop-down menu. You will select Sizzle and Shine series. It may be the last option for you. And as you go down through the survey at the very end for facilitator, you can put Laisha McDaniels. I'll put it in the chat, even though we had the beautiful LaKia come in and
no
speak.
worries.
But we have Laisha is the LLF and LLF consultants, because they are the ones that are sponsoring this today. So I am going to put Laisha's name in here as well, so that you can select that on the drop down menu. But we look forward to seeing you all. Please spread the word to everybody. The flyer for next week will be circulating very soon as well. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And thank you again, LaKia. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I hope y'all have a great one.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Mm.
Thank you for all the information you share. Very valuable. Thank you.
No
Thank
problem. You're
you.
A
welcome.
question, so there is any way that you can share the slideshow or is not possible?
We can definitely